But
Asante Sana, thank you so much.
aren't the Khojas also Gujaratis?
Yes.
So mostly like Gujarati, I guess you could say, a Kutchi especially.
Yeah. So Kutch is Gujarat, as per our geography.
And now it's part of Kutch. It used to be its own kingdom under the Rao. Yeah.
Okay.
In the 19th century. Yeah. All right, wonderful. All right, so let's begin. All right, wonderful. Let's see if I can pin myself. Yeah. All right, so I'll start. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the now second day of our international conference on consciousness in modern science and Jain philosophy, hosted by Florida International University and the Jain Education and Research Fund, as well as numerous partners here in the United States and internationally. We're honored to have a group of great speakers today. And the first panel that we'll be talking about is Relative Economics, a new model of development based on consciousness. Before we begin the first panel, a few housekeeping notes. I guess the first thing we say is Jai Jainendra, Mate and Vandami. We're very happy to have all of the Jain community and scholars and thinkers from around the world to join us today. It's an honor to sort of host this virtually from Miami, and we hope that this collaboration helps to spur the future of Jain studies, which would be international and in cooperating with Jain communities all across the world, trying to incorporate the values of Jainism into, as sort of thinking about the answers that humanity faces and the challenges that we deal with today, from climate change to resource depletion to violence that's in the world. The tradition of Jainism has very unique perspectives. And what we are trying to do here today through consciousness is being able to link these two. So thinking about the science of consciousness and what Jain philosophy and Jain thinkers have to say can provide us new avenues to think about how to live together in a peaceful and more harmonious world. So we're honored to have so many esteemed colleagues join us from around the world. Yesterday, we had about more than 2,000 people viewing through Zoom and also Facebook Live. Almost all 24 time zones. We had people that were viewing us, and we have hundreds of participants just on the Zoom link as well. So it's been a great honor. We had wonderful conversation in the chat as well between the participants and also among the panelists. So it's been really wonderful to link so many people from all over the world and diverse perspectives. We had great dignitaries that came and also just sort of thinkers from around the world and renunciants, scholars. So the idea behind the conference is that the academic space is a space that is also post-colonial in a way. So the idea is that we're also democratizing the higher education space, that there are many different types of knowledge and not everything is necessarily recognized by the Western university. And so what we're trying to do at FIU is to try to create more inclusion with the different types of knowledge that exist in different parts of the world. So it's wonderful to have you all today. So just a few notes before we begin. The first thing I would ask is, if you have a question, please don't type it into the chat box, but on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little box that says Q&A. Type in your question and we'll do our best to respond to it. If we don't have time and the panelist is not able to respond to it, what we will do is include your email, and then we will send you a response after the conference and follow up with the panelist for whom the question is directed. The second thing is, yesterday we realized that some of the participants were having a problem speaking in English, or it's very difficult sometimes, especially in a second language, to discuss very complex philosophical terms. So what I would suggest is that try to speak in whatever language you want to speak, and then someone from our team will also translate. So I'll say it in Hindi or Urdu as well. अगर आपको किसी भी दूसरे ज़बान में, हिंदी में कोई भी सवाल पूछने चाहते हैं बराए मेहरबानी टाइप कीजिए और हमारा टीम तर्जुमा करेगा. So if anyone has any questions in another language, please, you can type it in and we will respond to you in other languages if that's possible. All right, wonderful. So we will now begin with our first panelist, our first panel. And so the first panel is entitled Relative Economics, a New Model of Development Based on Consciousness. And the moderator that I will introduce this morning is Professor Ashok Bapna. Okay. All right. So Professor Ashok Bapna is honorary professor, Malavia International Institute of Technology in India, emeritus professor of the Jain Vishwa Bharati University in Lucknow, research professor, Jaipuria Institute of Management in Jaipur. He is president, Society for International Development, Rajasthan chapter, and National HRD Network. Professor Bapna is a former member of the State Planning Board for the government of Rajasthan and has an illustrious career as a professor of economics and a development professional. So I will now turn over this panel to Professor Bapna. All right. Yeah, Professor Bapna, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Professor Rosenberg, patron and president of Florida International University. Professor John F. Stack, founding dean, Stephen Jain Green School of International and Public Affairs. Professor Deepak Jain, chairperson of the conference. Professor Larson, head Department of Religious Studies. Professor Iqbal Akhtar, director Jain Studies. Dr. Pratap Sacheti, chairman Academic Committee. Samni Chaitanya Pragya, director general of the conference. Pooja and other members of the organizing committee. My greetings from the Pink City of India, that is Jaipur, to all the distinguished participants. It is heartening to know about this unique initiative by one of the leading universities of the America. Florida International University has become a center for world peace, harmony, and bringing different cultures on one platform. India, being the largest democracy of the world, recognizes this novel initiative of Florida International University. Yesterday was a historical day with so many excellent presentations, especially that of Professor Marshalkar, Indian Ambassador Sandhu, Muni Mahendra Kumarji, Professor Rosenberg, Professor Steak, Professor Deepak Jain, Professor Iqbal Akhtar, Professor Nathan Kurtz, Professor Chaitanya Pragya, Professor Sacheti, and many others. It was long back when Shamini Chaitanya Pragya asked me to suggest two eminent scientists as keynote speakers, one for the inaugural and the other for the latest session. I suggested her Padma Bhushan Professor Masterkar and Padma Bhushan Professor Kasturi Rangan. Since the invite reached them at short notice, I was not sure of their acceptance. Professor Mashikar agreed because of Deepak Jain, whom he considers as his beloved brother and has deepest regards for him. That is what he shared with me last night after his presentation. New education policy of Government of India lays a lot of emphasis on liberal arts and interdisciplinary and holistic approach to development. Present conference is a replica of new education policy. It has attracted large number of scholars from different disciplines. Professor Kasturi Rangan, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, and Padma Vibhushan is presently a chairman of new education policy, would have been the most appropriate person to deliver the closing address. He is one of the most eminent and distinguished scientists of today the country has and made visible impact as a chairman of Indian Space Research Organization. But due to his other pressing engagements, he could not accept our invitation. Jainism is not only a religion, but it is a way of life. Jain community, not even 1% of the world population, has made significant contributions. Famous philosopher Professor Bould Morris says, if world was prioritized of Jainism, this world would have become a beautiful place. Georgi Bernard says, if I were to born again, I would like to be born in Jain community. जैन धर्म जीने का दर्शन है. आपको जीवन का जो पहलू चाहिए वहां यहां मिल जाएगा. संस्कृति, कला, संगीत एवं भाषा का यह अद्भुत संगम है. जैन तीर्थंकरों ने संस्कृत को अपनाकर पाली और प्राकृत को अपनाया, क्योंकि वे जैन दर्शन को विद्वानों तक सीमित नहीं रखना चाहते थे, बल्कि सामान्य आदमी तक पहुंचे और उसके जीवन का कल्याण करें. हर वाद ने व्यक्ति को छोटा कर दिया, लेकिन हम देखते हैं कि जैन धर्म में जैन विचार ने मनुष्य को सबसे महान बना दिया है. जैन दर्शन में हिंसा पराजित करने में 3 अ का महत्व है. ये हैं अहिंसा, अनिकांतवाद और अपरिग्रह. तीनों एक दूसरे से जुड़े हैं, वे अलग नहीं हो सकते. भारत में न जीत सकने वाला सिकंदर जब एथेंस लौट रहा था, तो उससे एक जैन साधु ने कहा था कि दुनिया को जीतने वाले, काश तुम अपने आप को जीत सकते. जैन साधु सिकंदर के साथ एथेंस गए थे. आज भी वहां हम इन जैन साधु की प्रतिमा लगी हुई है. Jainism has a multiple aspects which makes it as a world religion. It has been advocated by the leading personalities of the world. In this process, Acharya Mahapragya came out with a novel idea of a new concept of relative economics. It has become a growing concern that the various existing economic model systems have failed to deliver desired goals relevant to the modern day society. It is largely because they lack a human approach and also suffer from a lack of consciousness. It is critical in modern day society to have a human approach in development approach. In the past, there was a perfect balance between people and planet, but as development started taking place, the balance started getting disturbed. At the root of the 3 Ps, planet, people, and profit, and their interplay in evolving societies and economies. The red race for becoming the superpower has caused immense exploitation all over the world. Leading nations like the USA, China, and India are all part of this ongoing red race, as are many of the European countries. Immoral tactics have resulted in an unequal distribution of resources across the globe. An individual urge to earn more and more profits has ruined the happiness of mankind. Degradation of climate and environmental are serious threats to the future of mankind. We need to save Mother Earth from the pulse of nascent greed, and it's here that the principle of Jainism, that is non-violence, apragraha, and anekantvad, can play a very important role. Acharya Mahapragya, in his way, in his new theory, brought closer relationship between relative economics and consciousness with a focus on a human-centric approach to development. Indian tradition in general and Jainism in particular includes planet kingdom and animal kingdom together with human beings, and all of them are to be taken into consideration while dealing with objects of enjoyment. It also means that economics has to play not to be only friendly to human beings, but it should also be eco-friendly. That is the only way it can lead to a sustainable development as well as all-round happiness. Economics, for it to be sustainable, has to take into account the development of consciousness as the ultimate target. When Lord Mahavir was laying down code of conduct, there were 3 traditions of code of conduct: Vedic, Buddhist, and Jain. All these 3 traditions have 4 moral virtues which were common to all. They were non-violence, celibacy, donation, and avoid alcoholism. It was only the fifth vow which was different in all the 3 traditions. Vedic system has liberty, whereas Buddhist system has avoidance of intoxication as the fifth vow. The Jains, however, had non-possessiveness as the fifth vow. This proves the importance which Jains have to the matter relating to economics. Therefore, Acharya Mahapragya said the supreme virtue is non-violence, but non-possessiveness. Despite being 0.6% of the world's population and 0.4% of total Indian population, Jain community has been among the highest contributing community to the Indian economy. It contributes 25% of India's GDP growth rate, 50% of India's diamond industry. Not only are the Jain peaceful, they recognize non-violence and self-control as a means of liberation, walk the path of honesty and sincerity, and promote detachment from material possessions. The need to understand ethical business values and practice from the viewpoint of the ideals and principles of Jainism is felt more now in 21st century than ever before. From the last few years, we are all aware that business practices are not done with good intentions, proper judgment, free from sins, and basically of virtuous deeds, and hence most of them are unethical. The only goal is to make more and more profit. This is the prevailing mentality which is growing day by day and due to which ethical thinking has been lost. This mentality is spreading deeply throughout the world. If proper and timely solutions are not implemented, then there are high chances of physical, mental, and financial losses. Jainism principles are designed to bring a lasting ethical impact on business. The ethical doctrine of non-possession is unique in the modern world, which has relevance to the solution of the global problems, that is, economic problems, ethical problems, and environmental problems. In order to discuss these issues, we have a very distinguished panel of Professor Atul Shah, eminent economist based in UK, Professor S.R. Bhatt, an eminent philosopher and former chairman of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, Government of India, Professor Dan Bhargav, an eminent Sanskrit scholar and national professor, Professor C.S. Barla and Prabhat Pankaj, both are eminent economists of Rajasthan. On this auspicious occasion, we have brought out a book entitled Relative Economics, a new way to look at economics. As you know, this whole concept is a brainchild of Acharya Mahapragya based on his book, that is Economics of Lord Mahavira. Inspired by him, during his lifetime, we had organized few international conferences on this very subject, and the first one was held in Delhi in 2005 during his Chaturmas, and one of the sessions of this conference was held in Rashtrapati Bhavan under the chairmanship of the then President of India, Dr. APJ Kalam. This book is an outcome of these conferences, and I'd like to acknowledge my sincere thanks to Swami Chaitanya Pragyaji for facilitating this book in an orderly manner. The book deals with an alternative way to look at economics. It seems the present system has resulted in great despair and discord everywhere. Without changing the system, we cannot think of having lasting happiness and peace. The book examines the philosophy of relative economics, which can provide a proper solution to this problem. My friend, Professor Prabhat Pankaj, has reviewed this book and shortly he will be presenting his presentation. He is a director, Jaipuria Institute of Management, Jaipur. He obtained first position in graduate and university gold medal in post-graduation. He is profound researcher, has written few books and articles in the area of trade, environment, poverty, consumer behavior, inflation. His recent research engagement in the area of happiness, Dr. Prabhat writes popular articles in newspapers and magazines, including Economic Times. With this brief introduction, I request Professor Prabhat Pankaj to kindly share his views on the book.
Thank you, Professor Bapta. I'm an ardent student of economics and a learner of relative economics. And when you awarded this task of reviewing this book, I was thrilled and I was also very excited to look forward to understand what this relative economics is all about. I had this opportunity of visiting Ladnu once and stay there for a couple of days, attend the conference on relative economics. I have been working on alternative economic model, happiness-based economic model, and with my association with a small tiny kingdom of Bhutan for about 6 years, where I lived for about 6 to 7 years, enabled me to take a close look at what alternative model could be. So with this background, it was more of a knowledge to be added to me rather than I will be adding more to the relative economics. So this book, Relative Economics, a new way to look at economics, when I had this opportunity of going through, I can firmly say that this is a book, is a must read, and it should be made available to everybody in academics and practice. They should know what are the principles on which the nice world order can be created, because we have actually made a mess of the entire thing. When I look at the development paradigm, we clearly found that the forces which has actually brought in a lot of changes in terms of what we call development and brought about more than 300 million people across Asia, let's say, above poverty line. And these are also the forces which has brought us to the brink today. And a lot of problems that has been created out of this kind of development model. So in the foreword itself, which is written by President Society for International Development, Lawrence Cooley, he said, and I quote, "We are in desperate need for alternative strategies," unquote. So what is this desperate need for alternative that we are searching for? I was trying to figure out what is that desperate need. And I'm reminded of some of the work which was done by clinical psychologists like Richard Davidson, and he asked a question to the audience. He asked the question, first question he asked was, what are you doing right now? So, the audience, are you aware about what you're doing right now? That's the first question he asked. And followed by the second question he asked was, where is your mind at this moment? Is your mind on the thing you're doing right now, or your mind is somewhere else? And surprisingly, overwhelming more than 60% of the audience actually said or accepted that their mind is somewhere else and they are somewhere else. So he actually talked about distractibility, the attention deficit in human being. Now, what has caused this distractibility and attention deficit? He also talked about moderate to high level of loneliness. And he said that, the loneliness is a bigger predictor of death in comparison to obesity. And we all know what obesity has done to us. He also talked about societal rates, the stress that is there at the back of our mind. And one of the recent reports says that people in stress, almost like 83% of world population is under stress, some kind of stress. And look at the figure in India, for example, 89% of people are under some kind of stress. He also talked about pervasive loss of purpose. He said, things are happening because people have lost the purpose. And he said people in their 60s with low purpose in life are over 2 times as likely rate, and the way we are going to age, the way we are going to live has changed completely. So that's what the development has brought to us. And this is exactly what Lawrence Clooney, when he said that we are in a desperate need for alternative strategies. That's exactly what I can bring forth. He invoked Mahatma Gandhi. And he said, he quoted Mahatma Gandhi, and I quote, "World has enough for its needs, but not for its greed." And Professor Bapna, in his writing in this book, he wrote, and I quote, "Humanity is at the crossroad today." This is exactly what we are talking about. And this is exactly why we are here to talk about the alternative ways of looking at economic development. And Professor Bapna has also written with his sense of despair in this book, if you read very clearly, and I quote again Professor Bapna, I quote, "The entire mankind is seeking an answer to $1 trillion question as to who, when, and how some phenomenon can bring people, can bring mankind." But he's not very sure who is going to bring this peace and prosperity to mankind, who is going to salvage us out of this doomsday.
Dr. Pankaj, thank you so much. We have, if you can wrap it up maybe in another minute or two, because we
Yeah,
have 3 more
sure. I'll
speakers
wrap it
before the
up
end of
in
the
a
day.
minute.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
of
I
course.
appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, my review of this book is it's a kind of alternative that is in front of us. And there are 8 precepts that comes out of this relative economics. One is ethical, another is humane, third is sustainable, fourth is coexistence, fifth is restrained, sixth is inclusiveness, seventh is harmonious development, and the eighth is non-violent development. And it all comes from the different precepts that it talks about. And the best part of this book is when we try and understand that parigraha, which is the accumulation of wealth, is the root cause of all problems, is a kind of neutral element in itself. It is neither, it doesn't neither lead to sukha, that is happiness, or unsukha, that is unhappiness. It is the desire associated with parigraha that makes the things worse. Hence, the wealth is turning out to be ahimsa sapeksha. And that's the clue to the relative economics. So I'll end up over here. And if time permits, we'll talk more on anubrata and other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pankaj. We really appreciate it. The next speaker will be Professor Atul Shah. Very honored to see him again and to have him join us. He is a fellow East African, and he is a professor in the UK in the Department of International Politics, School of Arts and Social Sciences, City University in London. He is a qualified chartered accountant and member of ICAEW. He's founder of the Global Young Jains Movement and founder of the Jain Spirit Global magazine. So he's a wonderful scholar, and we're really happy that he's able to join us from London. So, Professor Shah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thanks to FIU and JVB and all the organizers of this conference. When we talk about economics, we have to accept that the kinds of economic system that we are under today has been established by a Western order and a Western mindset. And also the link between consciousness and economics has been broken for hundreds of years. So it's a very materialist economics, and an economics where nature is seen as a resource rather than an ecosystem. In this sense, what the Jains have to say in terms of a new economics, or an economics which is sustainable, is very profound, very far-sighted, and also has been demonstrated by their own actions. All over the world, the Jains are one of the most successful business and professional communities, individually and collectively. And that success has been retained not just for 1 year or 5 years, but over multiple generations. So this idea of sustainability, which the world is now talking about as if it's a new science, we have been living it for hundreds of years. So when we speak about economics or sustainable development, we speak from experience and we speak from wisdom. So when the connection between consciousness and economics is broken, we can't repair it by simply doing a patch. Right? What we have to address is the primary ontology of economics. And in a sense, the timing is very good, because sustainable development can only come from a spiritual approach to economics, from this idea that the human being is not just a body, but it's a mind, body, and spirit. It's a combination of those. And the preservation of nature requires a spiritual approach to nature. So we have capacity to add something new, but then the other side also has to understand and respect us and allow us to speak truth to power, allow us to show the kind of economic models that we have and the philosophy and the wisdom that we bring to the table. That space is non-existent virtually today. Yeah. So we have to carve that space as a community. And for that, we need to invest in academic research. We need to work with intellectuals who are on those top tables trying to shape and negotiate public policy. And just by saying that we believe in ahimsa or we believe in aparigraha or anekant will not, those beliefs and those private practices will not bring about global and international reform. So we must understand the extent of the challenge that we have in front of us. I agree with the earlier speakers that we do have a very holistic philosophy and science, which is quite relevant for these times. But we need, when we do try to reform or transform, we need to understand the profound intellectual challenge that we have ahead of us. This idea of a secular science, a science which is beyond religion, is very deep in all our universities and in so much of global scientific dialogue, that to try and bring in a different perspective, a perspective which embraces spirituality, wisdom, and consciousness is very, very difficult. So I don't know how long you want me to speak, but I just thought I'd set that agenda quite clearly because I speak from experience. I have been trying to engage at these levels. And I think, there are deep structural factors. Just to give you an example, the business school today is an American invention, but is now being exported all over the world and is a primary driver of economic practice. And if you look at the curriculum of the business school today, there is no space for spirituality or wisdom. At most, there will be a module on business ethics, which is very often taught as a sideline rather than a primary domain of business practice. Business is still encouraged to have material priorities, to aim for profit maximization, and stock markets and institutions all over the world are built around this idea of maximizing shareholder value, which completely goes against the grain of Jain economics, which is about interdependence and actually making sure that all stakeholders in an enterprise are respected, and that businesses should operate not in a win-lose way, but in a win-win way. Yeah. So we need to also reform the structures of the stock markets, for example, which people are talking about as booming, but actually they are leading to the greatest inequality on the planet. And they are the primary causes of poor development, of extraction of wealth rather than investment in wealth. They breed speculation rather than long-term sustainable investment. And they are so powerful and influential that even individuals all over the world, even young people, students, are being invited to gamble in the stock market as a way of dealing with the high cost of living that we are facing. So they turn from ethics, they turn in towards speculation without even realizing it. So we have some very profound challenges ahead of us. And I think it would be a mistake as Jains to think that just because we have some nice philosophy and some nice values, the world will change, and it will not. We need to invest in think tanks. This conference should create a direct vision for us being such a wealthy community to take a special role in influencing global policy, global institutions, through the wisdom that and the philosophy and the science that we have privatized our knowledge, and we are using it for our private benefits and our private businesses. But our cultural investment, our intellectual investment is absolutely minimal. And we need to rise to this challenge, because we as individuals are not greedy. We are not selfish, but we have lost a vision, an intellectual vision, that our business skills need to go into the uh, global business curriculum. They need to transform the primary institution of education called the business school and its content and practice. And even some of our Jain professors who are in business schools, unfortunately, do not use their power and leadership to transform the global business curriculum. So we need to rise to those challenges. And I put those challenges right in front of you now. Let's not celebrate what we have, but look at what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Shah. We really appreciate that. Wonderful. I think it's going to be a lot for us to think about as well. I think as we go forward, especially coming out of the pandemic, I mean, we're seeing that the major challenges that we're having, not just in terms of inequality in the world, but also the impact that we're having on the climate and the world around us. So absolutely, they're really important words for us to keep in mind. The next panelist that I will be, and we're looking forward to having more discussion with you, Professor Shah, and all the panelists. The next speaker that we will have will be Professor Butt, and he is a philosopher and Sanskritist. He's a National Fellow of the Indian Council of Social Science Research in the ministry in the government of India. He is a chairman of the Indian Philosophy Congress and the Asian African Philosophy Congress. He is also editor of Bloomsbury Encyclopedia of Philosophers. He has been the professor and head of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Delhi, Delhi chairman of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research in the government of India. He is internationally known and recognized as an authority on ancient Indian heritage, Buddhism, Jainism, and Vedanta. And he's a member of many international associations and journals that focus on philosophy. So we're very honored to have Professor Butt joining us from India, and I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Iqbal Akhtar, for nice words. My respectful greetings to all the distinguished panelists and other scholars on and off the dais. Friends, we are deliberating on a theme which is of a great practical importance and utility in the contemporary world, particularly in the post-epic corona scenario. We find that all is not well with the global existential scenario, and it calls for deep reflection, proper planning, and adequate execution. We have in our deliberation focus on two concepts. One is consciousness, and the other is on relative economics. We human beings are self-conscious. Consciousness is something which is immediately, intimately experienced by us. We are conscious of our own existence, our nature, our place in the cosmic setup, our role in the cosmic setup, and what should be the goal of our purpose of our existence in the cosmos. We are aware of our own existence and also existence of multiple entities, animate as well as inanimate. And therefore, this cosmic process is a network of interdependence. Paraspara upagraha, mutual reciprocal relationship. And therefore, under ignorance, if we think that we exist for our own self, our existence is for our own satisfaction, for our own progress and development, and then it is a wrong understanding. It is mithya drishti. A proper drishti, a samyak drishti, a proper viewpoint would be that we should have a peaceful coexistence, collective enterprises for mutual wellness, and mutual caring and sharing of the resources which are available to us. And therefore, we have to reflect as to what should be our approach to reality, our own self and the surrounding universe. What should be the purpose of our existence? How to plan our existence in a best possible manner so that we lead a life of wellness and happiness. In Jain mode of thinking, our life is not accidental. There is a purpose to be realized. And the purpose is not just individual. The purpose is universal, cosmic. This is the spiritual approach. A spiritual approach is not individual centered. It is cosmos centered. It doesn't care just for I, but care for we. The I is to be so universalized that it turns into we. A sort of the individual consciousness to be transformed into collective consciousness. And this collectivity, in fact, should be the real goal or purpose of our existence. We have self-consciousness. We have consciousness of the surrounding elements. We unfortunately do not know the real nature of our own self and also the real nature of the surrounding universe. And therefore, it is knowledge. Our consciousness should get transformed into knowledge, knowledge of within and knowledge of without. So it is the knowledge which is most fundamental thing. And we find when we reflect on consciousness, well, there are multiple manifestations of our consciousness. Cognitive manifestations are there, cognitive manifestations are there, affective manifestations are there. All these are valuable and they need to be catered to. There has to be a holistic approach to human consciousness, which in fact incorporates the universal consciousness, and the two are perfectly in harmony. When we come to economics, It is one of the manifestations of human consciousness. It stands for judicious availability of resources, both human resources as well as material resources. Human being has consciousness at the center, and the universe also is consciousness manifested. All resources are also consciousness manifested. We may make a distinction between pure consciousness, which we experience within ourselves, and the manifested consciousness. All entities are manifested consciousness. And all entities, therefore, have an inherent value. Consciousness itself is value in itself. It has intrinsic worth. And so also all manifestations. There is nothing in this universe which is valueless. Everything has a value. Everything has a intrinsic worth and therefore should be respected, should be protected, and also instrumental value. So both intrinsic and instrumental, we have to realize that. In economics, therefore, also we have to have that sort of consciousness manifested. We find that at present, the model of economic planning and execution is very much lopsided. It is individualistic, it is competitive, it is exploitative, it is consumeristic, and it leads to what can be called as all sorts of discriminations and deprivements. And therefore, we are painfully aware of shortcomings of the present mode of economic thinking. There is a need for a radical change, a sort of a paradigm shift, so that the real purpose of economic planning is realized. The real purpose is cosmic wellness. We call in our terminologies hita, wellness, and sukha, happiness. Wellness and happiness are the two goals of our life, and to realize these goals, we resort to economic planning in terms of production, in terms of distribution, and in terms of consumption. These are the three aspects of economic planning.
Absolutely.
And
Dr. Butt,
therefore, pardon?
yes, sir. If you could, 2 more minutes, if you could wrap up.
I see. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we have some very seminal ideas and concepts in Jain mode of economics. First, of course, is that it is cooperative, relative, involving all stakeholders. Second is it is compassionate. It should result in what can be called as labha and shubha. Shubha means virtuous, not harmful, but conducive to the realization of the two goals, that is hita and sukha. And it should be, apart from shubha, should be labha. That means it should be helpful to realize cosmic wellness and happiness, should not be detrimental to that. And so these are the two means and modalities we have to adopt in economic planning. And in this, we have to see to it that no harm is done to any section of the cosmos. Ahimsa, in fact, stands for due respect to every iota of the cosmos, and allowing every iota of the cosmos to play its own role in the cosmic process. So
Absolutely.
it is not just mere killing. It is a very rich and very wide concept to be made use of in economic planning. And here we have to talk of what can be called as a minimum and judicious utilization of resources. So we have this concept of aparigraha and ichha parimana. These are rich concepts
Sure.
to be taken note of. And in this, our aim should be furtherance of our existence.
Absolutely.
No depletion. No
Yes, sir.
depletion of the resources. So it has to be regenerative economics. This is another important point which we have. So thank you very much
Okay.
for.
Thank you so much, Professor Butt. It's wonderful
yeah.
to hear your thoughts. And I think sort of thinking of sort of the project in a philosophical terms will allow us to kind of rethink how we've structured, the economics. So I think those are very, very, very wise words. And we look forward to hearing from you more in the discussion section.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's been an
Thank
honor
you.
to hear from you. Yes, sir. The next person will be Professor Barla, who is a retired professor of economics from the University of Rajasthan, India. Prior to that, he taught at the University of Toulouse in France and Tribhuvan University in Nepal. He's been a guest lecturer at Aristotle University in Thessaloniki, Greece, University of Paris, and he's also worked as a consultant on various projects for the World Bank, the Canadian Development Agency, and has been sort of widely published in conferences and journals internationally. So it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome Professor Barla to the conference. Yes, sir.
My esteemed colleagues, I was listening to all these scholars. Let me mention that for almost 40 years, I was associated with teaching economics. Which economics? The economics which I inherited from my teachers. And let me also mention very clearly, I had an opportunity to study at Michigan State. There also I was taught that the principal goal of economics is to maximize profit, maximize utility, and maximize our happiness on account of these pursuits. Let me mention, when I met Acharya Mahapragya about 10 years ago, I came to know that whatever economics I was teaching my students has in reality no relevance to the practical world. In economics, we teach our students to pursue three principal goals. As a consumer, you maximize utility or satisfaction level. As a producer, you maximize production. Use as many resources as you can, such that production is maximized. And thirdly, as a business person, you maximize your profit. Let me mention, when I had some sort of interaction with Acharya Mahapragya, I came to know that we are going against what Prabhu Mahavir taught us. He taught us to restrain consumption. But I used to teach my students, consumption need not be restrained. I remember W.W. Rostow, when he talked about growth, he said there are 5 stages of growth, but the most coveted growth, the stage is the stage of high mass consumption. Perhaps people all over the world are pursuing this goal. We imitate the standards of living which Europeans have. The Thai people, I had the opportunity to spend some time in Bangkok. Everyone across the world tries to imitate the standard of living of other people. I've tried to develop a model, which I'm calling simulation model. That model is based on the belief that if you try to maximize consumption, there is no end to it. If consumption is increased, obviously we are bound to increase production also. If we are increasing production, we are using our resources. Let me also mention in this context, in 1960, some economists assembled at Rome and they decided there must be a limit to growth. Unfortunately, countries like India also want that growth needs to be maximized. We are trying to pursue the goal of achieving $5 trillion level of our GDP. Let me mention what was the decision which these economists reached in 1960. They said there must be a limit to growth. Because if there is no limit to growth, we are going to utilize available physical resources for maximizing growth rate in each nation. Perhaps we will not be leaving any physical resource for our next generation. Man has become so selfish that he would like to maximize growth rate and production level for his own generation. So there was a concept given by these economists, and we call it Club of Rome. Nobody tried to follow what these economists suggested in 1960. Perhaps the whole world is pursuing this goal. Let us maximize growth. What is the outcome of this pursuit? Let me mention, friends, if you are using your resources for the present generation, you will not be leaving any resources. And let me mention, I have done some studies. In Rajasthan, where I am living, after 30 years, there will not be any groundwater. Likewise, after 40 years, there will not be any crude oil left under the ground in world. What are we doing? We have become so self-centered and selfish that we want to maximize consumption level of our own generation. Let me mention in this context that unfortunately, this model of attaining maximum growth has led several problems for us. The first problem, the larger or the higher the level of production, the more pollution we create. I know numerous examples where increasing air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and these types of pollution are creating havoc for us. Let me also mention in this context, there are some studies which mention that if number of vehicles increase in a particular nation, there will be a jam. Economists have tried to convert time value of money of these jams. Millions of dollars are lost in these jams, but we don't care. Noise pollution is another problem which we are facing. What I'm saying is, we are pursuing a goal which is concerned with our own maximization of welfare. I agree with Professor Bhatt when he says that Anta Sukhai is important. Who cares? And what is the ultimate goal of all these pursuits? Are we getting happiness? Let me mention in this context, very recently, a report has been published about Global Happiness Index. Out of 277 countries, what is the rank of India? India ranks very, very low. In spite of these goals, we are not. What I'm saying is happiness does not come from increasing production. Happiness does not come from increasing consumption level. And therefore, I would like to say, relative economics must be taught across the world. I'm afraid I'm not free to implement this type of recommendation because across the world, I had experience to work in France, in other countries, and in United States, I stayed for almost 4 years. Nobody is going to listen to what I'm saying. Please stop this lust for production. Stop this lust for consumption. If we don't do that, there will be 3 major problems which world is going to face. Number 1, we will be rich. What is the goal of our economic policies in India? We want to reach $5 trillion goal. Okay, we shall reach that goal. The per capita income may also increase thereby. Ultimately, what is going to happen? The next generation will neither have a fertile land, nor adequate water, nor adequate mineral resources, and therefore growth rate is bound to topple down after some years. Therefore, it is high time to start thinking, and I'm afraid my advice is not going to be accepted by our policymakers in India also, because everyone is talking about $5 trillion. I jokingly asked my friend who is associated with policy making in Delhi, can you spell out this word trillion? What is the meaning of $5 trillion? And let me mention, even if $5 trillion is achieved, it is very open that in India, even though we are 5th as far as GDP is concerned, we are, what is the rank of India in per capita income? Our rank is 140th. My problem is, we are teaching, number 1, we are teaching wrong economics in our universities. Number 2, we are practicing wrong goals as far as government level is concerned. And thirdly, we are teaching people to improve our standard of living, more and more cars, more and more gadgets. This is not going to help. And I'm afraid this is not going to improve our happiness level also. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Barla. That it's very important words. I think trying to change a paradigm is a very difficult thing to do. And so I think that's kind of what you're proposing, a paradigm shift in terms of thinking about how do we consume and sort of just even the basic fundamentals of our society, right? Which is kind of materialism, consumerism, and just innovation, just creating new things for its own sake rather than understanding the rationale behind it, right? So just trying to maximize money as an end in and of itself. So those are, I think everyone has, the majority of the part in the panel, everyone I think has a similar perspective. I think this is what I was we were chatting with Professor Shah, that what we can do is try to also maybe in the future have a panel with people in the corporate world as well. So not just business schools, but also the corporate world, and try to sort of discuss and connect with people on these ideas, because we have them within our circles of knowledge and networking, but it's not necessarily, these ideas are not getting out into the business world to corporations and people that have power, so that's something that's important for us. So thank you so much, Professor Barla, I appreciate that. Very quickly, what I wanted to do is just show you the cover for the book that we will, and I'll just share my screen very quickly. So this is the book that is being released today. And so you can purchase a copy of the book at the Jain Vishwa Bharati bookstore. The code is right there, books.jvbharati.org, and we'll put it into the chat box as well. So this is the book, Relative Economics, A New Way to Look at Economics. And it's been edited by Professor Ashok Bapna. So we're very happy and honored that he has decided to release the book here at the conference. I think it should be a very good read and a lot for us to think about in terms of how do we incorporate the principles of Jainism, nonviolence, anekantavad, aparigraha into sort of the business world, right? So that's we really appreciate that opportunity to be able to read that, and we look forward to following up on that discussion. So what I wanted to do very quickly before we open it up for discussion is I just wanted to introduce the president of the Jain community here in Florida, Deep Surana. So she wanted to just give a remark and respond to Professor Shah and the ideas behind the conference.
Hello. Dear Ogba,
So-
Professor Bhargav is still pending. So please first announce his name and he will speak. Yeah.
Okay, Bhargav.
Yeah, Professor Bhargav.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Let's do that.
Yes.
All right. Professor
He's
Bhargav. Sorry about that.
He's the philosopher of India and
Okay.
also
All right.
in
Perfect.
Jainism. Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. Professor Bhargav. So I'll turn it over to you. Let me just introduce you very quickly. All right. All right. So Professor Bhargav is Professor Emeritus of the Jain Vishwa Bharati University in Lucknow. He has been the lecturer head of Department of Sanskrit at Rajams College in Delhi, a reader of Sanskrit at the University of Delhi, principal of the Kendriya Sanskrit Vidyapith, Jammu and Allahabad, professor and head of the Department of Sanskrit, University of Jodhpur, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Education and Social Sciences, University of Jodhpur, visiting professor of the Rashtriya Sanskrit Sansthan in New Delhi, chairman of the Veda Vijnana Peeth, J.R. Rajasthan Sanskrit University in Jaipur, and has authored more than 200 research papers. So Professor Bhargav, we're honored to have you, and please proceed.
Dear participants, I will start with an incident of ancient India about 3,000 years back. A person, Narad by name, has mastered as many as 18 disciplines of knowledge, right from the Ved up to mathematics, astronomy, and whatnot. With this knowledge, he approaches another saintly person, Sanat Kumar, and says, I have mastered all these branches of knowledge, but I am still in grief. I am still suffering. Could you lead me across this misery? Sanat Kumar says that, well, as long as you look for happiness outside you, you are bound to be miserable. Because happiness lies within, in the consciousness, and consciousness is not outside you, it is within you. This brings the importance of consciousness in Indian tradition. Coming to Jainism, which is an important part of Indian tradition, the first statement is, Naham deho na mano nicheva vani. I am neither the body, nor the mind, nor the speech. In short, I am not matter. And what the senses can grasp is only which has some color, some taste, some smell, some touch. And as consciousness doesn't have any one of them, therefore consciousness is beyond the grasp of senses. Varna ras gandha phasa jivasya no santi. Now, the third statement is that whatever imperfection, old age, death, disease, misery, they belong not to consciousness, but to the material world. Jai jara marana roya sokaya jivas nusanti. So, the conclusion is that consciousness cannot be grasped by senses. It is not a matter of perfection. It is not a matter of inference either. Jana alinga gahanam. There is no program by which you can infer consciousness. So what is the way out? It is not any academic discussion, but a transformation from extroversion to introversion. It is a paradigm shift that you have to look inward. There is very strong statement in Mokh Pahun. Aruhavi antarappa, bahirappa, chadiyun kivihena, jaija paramappa, udayim jinvare vedehim. Leave extroversion, be introvert, and then you will have the sense of fulfillment, the perfection in your life, which is technically stated here as Paramatma. The third thing, consciousness is ever pure, and therefore all activities, good or bad, are neutral to consciousness. They may bring material prosperity, or if they are inauspicious, they may bring misery. But as far as consciousness is concerned, na vihodi apamatto, na pamatto, na jana jodu bhavo samesa. There is no question of vigilance or negligence as far as consciousness is concerned. Friends, the Jain view has been summarized in 2 lines. Whatever comes from outside is the cause of misery. Asravo bhavahetu syat. Samvaro moksha karanam. And controlling this inflow from outside is the cause of happiness. And as this consciousness has no attribute by which we describe a thing, therefore it is beyond speech also. Sabve sarani atthanti takka jathana vijjayi mai tathana gaya. It is beyond logic, beyond wisdom. I again repeat, it is a matter of transformation, inner transformation from extrovert tendency to introversion. It is not an academic exercise. Tenopanishad corroborates it. Na tatra vaga gacchati no manahe. Friends, I have tried to base my representation on the primary sources because it was this which was taught by my teachers like Dr. A. N. Upadhyay, Dalsukhbhai Malavaniya, those old great teachers, that anything which is not there in the original should not be said. Na malum, na moolam likhate kinchit, na napekshitam uchyate. Only 3 sentences regarding the application of this concept of consciousness. Number 1, for any good pursuit, you need an iota of sacrifice. But what do you get in return? The social reformation, the political stability? No. According to this concept, what you get is this, and it is very valuable: purity of consciousness. When you sacrifice something for a good cause, you get purity of consciousness. This is number one. Number two, when you lead an austere life, you strengthen your willpower. All luxuries make us weak inwardly. And number three, simple living means a life free from tension. Whereas the more we have, we think we become happier. Maybe that we become happier in a particular sense of the term, but the more we possess, the more is the burden of life on us. This should not also be missed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for those wise words and something to live by. So thank you, sir, for your time and for the knowledge that you've bestowed upon us. So I would.
For 2 minutes, you can give to Professor Deepak Jain and also to Professor Muni Mahendra Kumar to speak few words in this context.
Professor Deepak Jain, would you like to say anything?
Because it is the topic of his.
All right, so I know that Deep had a question, so I would just like to open it up for her. If you can start the question and answer session. Deep, would you like to go ahead and ask a question?
I can ask the question later if everything is going. That's okay. We can do.
We can start now. Later. We have a few minutes. Yeah. Why don't if you want to start the question, and then we'll wait for Deepak Jain, Professor Deepak Jain, to come back. Yeah.
Okay. So the question here is, when we're talking about a topic like economics and relativity, where does the professors who are teaching this, the professors who are teaching in the business school this kind of subject, like how Dr. Atul Shah said, that are the students or the coming generation are learning about all these things that we're talking about, philosophy of Jainism and consciousness? So would anybody like to answer, Dr. Atul Shah or any of the panelists?
Okay, all right. So the question was basically, when we're thinking about business school, what are the ways that we can think about incorporating these ideas of consciousness or these ideas of sort of rethinking sort of how we do business? So any ideas of how to incorporate into the curriculum? Yeah.
Thank you. I think just as faith has been stripped out of economics, more or less culture has also, the diversity of cultures have also been virtually taken out of the business school. So if you look at India, and India today, there are 3,500 business schools in India, and they're growing every day. Now, if you look at the curriculum of those business schools, there is no space in there for spirituality or for even the diversity of cultures and business practices that happen in India. For example, even within the Jains, there is a real diversity between the Kutchi Jains and the Palanpuri Jains and the Marwadi Jains, etc. So students, and they have something called the family MBA as well. So they try and teach family business, but again, in a very Americanized or professional governance type of way, without actually teaching them the different cultural practices. And even, for example, in the case of the Jains, the fact that we have, a very strong and very long record of business success. There are hardly any business case studies and books which actually show how we practice sustainable business in everyday life. So there is a big vacuum, both in terms of content and in terms of delivery. And, generally speaking, in India also, the investment in business research is very low. So where in the West, there is a bigger investment in business research, but the direction of that investment is extremely materialistic and extremely secular. So there is a big, big challenge ahead of us. we can, if we want to, with our vision and with our leadership strengths and strategic thinking, make a difference to that. But that would require some investment and some kind of professional engagement and an understanding that the challenge of the variety of levels of challenges that lie ahead of us, including transforming the structures and systems by which economics operates today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Can
Professor.
I take one minute?
May I say something?
Yes.
Yes.
Fortunately, in India, situation is changing, and in the syllabi of business management, there is some introduction of spirituality. Say, for example, Bhagavad Gita has been made compulsory in all business management schools. So I propose that basic teachings of Jainism, that is ahimsa, aparigraha, and in fact, in our houses also, in the front, we say labha shubha. Well, but what is the implication of this in our actual mode of living of labha and shubha? Well, and we also talk of kshema, yoga and kshema. So they should be taught all these things which are there in our psyche. They are not alien elements. So I think there is a need for more and more changing of syllabi in particularly in Indian management schools. And if it is done here, naturally its effect will be there in the Western world as well. So we in India, I think, should take a lead for that.
Thank you, Professor Bhatt. I'll just turn it over to Professor Jain.
I would also like to make a sure.
Yeah.
No, I just want to add, see, being a part of this business school, things are not as bad as articulated by some of the speakers here. See, if you look at US business schools, most of the new donations are coming to create the concept of social entrepreneurship. What is social good? What is good for the society? I personally think that India is more materialistic focused than, I would say, US. Spent 41 years in this thing. Schools in US are changing. They are bringing what I would say, this whole concept of Aneka, that business education should be beyond business. I created a course on Shakespeare at Kellogg School, that how people should think of human behavior. So this whole concept of social thing, I used to teach a course on spiritual entrepreneurship at Kellogg. So people are realizing, but you cannot change the paradigm. You have to start emphasizing when you teach something to think beyond business, beyond profits. And just not to take too much time, I once spent with Mr. Milton Friedman, the man who proposed the whole concept of the only purpose of business is to maximize profits. I got an appointment, spent 2 hours with him. His point is, if you don't have resources, you cannot do anything. First, create the resources and then think how you allocate resources to different purposes. And one of the purpose should be how you make the society better, how you make the education infrastructure better, talking about Chicago public schools and others. So I think that we are moving in that direction, at least in the West. But when I teach at Indian School of Business, I talk to Indian business people, they say, Jain साहब पहले ये बताइए पैसा कैसे बनता है, ये आदर्शवादी बात आप अलग रखिए. So when this is the mindset, then you just get turned off completely. That's my view.
Let me also mention,
we are more
being from
materialistic
the
than
business
anyone else.
management, being from the business management, I would like to totally agree with Dr. Deepak Jain. And I personally would not like to hold on to the view that the business syllabus is not changing. And it's changing, and it's changing at a quite rapid pace, right from the West to Indian context. So we have the courses like happiness and well-being. So if you're talking about a small town like Jaipur, here in Jaipur, in our institute, we are teaching course on happiness and well-being. So emotional intelligence is being taught, and there is a lot of spiritual dimensions that is being brought in. at the international level, if you're talking about the OECD's initiatives, the measuring progress of the society, they're talking about the alternative ways of measuring progress of the society. We haven't talked about that much. Look at the France, somebody was quoting France, but look at the initiative which President Sarkozy took, Professor Stiglitz, Professor Sain, Professor Fitossi, and look at the report that they have prepared on measuring the progress of the society. It's all alternative that they are talking about. People are talking about now the capability enhancement measure for happiness, capability enhancement interventions people are talking about. Look at the individual initiatives in Bhutan, the whole measure of cross-national happiness. So, 9 dimensions of happiness, the holistic development that they're talking about is spiritual as well. Look at UAE, the futuristic city of the world, Dubai, and look at how they actually have the Ministry of Happiness. They have the Minister of Happiness, and they're talking about creativity. They're talking about, live, the real-time experience sharing on happiness. US initiative, Brazil, Thailand, UK, I can give you hundreds of examples where things are changing. It's not that things are not changing. So I'm not a kind of person who will be thinking that it's the end of the road. And look at relative economics. It's also emerging. And we are trying to understand what relative economics is all about. So these are all the alternatives which actually hold on to the future of management education. The whole concept of teaching management philosophy had undergone a change. Dr. Deepak Jain is a master of it, and he can actually tell us how it has changed. But it's absolutely changing everywhere. Thank you so much for time.
Of course, of course. So yeah, we're ending the panel about 4 minutes. Are there any last comments or questions from people in the panel or from the audience members?
Good morning. This is Sapan. And I just wanted to mention one thing. It was a very interesting session for sure. And as I was reflecting, I feel like I did a family MBA learning business with my uncle, Mamaji, and jewelry business. I went to do master in business economics and then came to US and did my master's in business administration from FIU. So if I could link to a lot of items, a lot of practical ideas are still not clear. I mean, there was a comment that we really cannot change something which is in the system so deep. But at the same point, I was reflecting, and maybe if anybody would want to take this, we as Jains have been very successful, overall, if we look. Now, nothing is perfect, but you will look at other communities, Jains have been ahead in many ways. And so what is good in our Jain way of coming up, which should be strengthened, and where are the weaknesses which should be curbed or we should become aware of? I think that would be if somebody has any comments on that, that would be very, very nice.
Okay, can I say something?
I can give a short answer to that, which is social capital, right? That if we look at our history, for example, our economic and business history, we have succeeded through our interrelationships and trust that we have had. And that is something that is being depleted in the West, the individualistic kind of society, and probably also now in India as well. So we need to preserve our social capital, and we need to value it. And we also need to value our cultural capital. So if we can value cultural and social capital and keep building and sustaining the kind of communities that we have built, then I think for us as a community, we will improve our resilience and sustainability. And that takes time, that takes effort, that takes vision, that takes sacrifice. But first and foremost, we must understand that without a community, we are nobody. And therefore our community is our collective capital. So I'll just say a brief answer there. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Professor Shah.
Can I just add one point over here? So one of the things that relative economics actually talks about is the training part. So this sounds like a solution, because a lot of things depends on what kind of training are we actually imparting. So if it's not just about changing the syllabus in the educational system, or it's about more of a training for mindfulness, let's say, for example, it works. Training for happiness, it works. Training for consciousness, I'm sure it also might work. So there is a chain of training that we require, because that's one solution that can.
And just one last point I want to make.
Please, yes, go ahead.
For us to bring change, the most significant concept in the whole Jain literature is this concept of anekant. And that to me is the source of global peace, harmony, and prosperity. If we have to think about changing business schools, this whole concept of not putting it anekant, but in the concept of diversity of thoughts and perspectives is something that we need to encourage in the curriculum, that how you can have multiple perspectives. I slightly disagree with Professor Baldra when he was saying what we are teaching is wrong. This wrong or right are extremes. You cannot say this is wrong. That is just one perspective. You may disagree with it, but I completely disagree with you. So when we take these extreme positions, then the best solution for people is to just ignore it. Life is not 0 or 1. Life is between 0 and 1, and I will try to convince people with arguments. So Sapan, just to answer your questions, people ask me these things a lot. And what do you teach in business schools? I'm a mathematician. I got my PhD in mathematics, so I know what precise science is. I just tell people that in business schools, we teach people how you put structure on unstructured problems. Structured thinking, sound reasoning, and timely action is what the essence of business education or any education is about. Family business is less structured. You start using tradition. Business school research comes up with frameworks. They say what works under condition A and what would not work in condition B, different cross-cultural. So I think this is all driven by research. To say something is right or wrong, I completely disagree with it. That is defeating the whole purpose of anekant.
Thank you so much, Professor Jain. And with that, we will end the session. Again, this was the session on relative economics. And I think we had, honestly, one of the most stimulating panels that we've had so far, with Professor Bapna, Professor Shah, Professor Barla, Bhargava, and Pankaj. And again, thank you to Professor Deepak Jain, Samaniji, and all of the wonderful participants that we've had today. So we will take a 15-minute break, and then we will start back at 9:15 Eastern Standard Time. And the next panel will be the biological and spiritual evolution of consciousness. That will be moderated by Professor and Chair of Religious Studies at FIU, Dr. Eric Larson. So we will see you in about 15 minutes.
The environment that students are facing today is unlike ever before.
It's all about team-based work in the 21st century of careers.
Being able to do teamwork and compromise on their positions and play the role of different sectors, the public, the private, the nonprofit sector, with different strategic priorities, and being able to combine them all and superpose them into an initiative that truly adds value to all the organizations and the actors involved.
The way that we communicate has changed.
More and more, we're bringing in professionals who have a skill set that combines with the academic expertise of other faculty members that really make a difference.
I want to be able to remove the fourth wall between the classroom and the world around us.
The different experiences that the faculty and the masters has were fundamental to really understand what I needed and to gain these different points of view to become a better professional.
One of the most important dimensions, and it's really the crowning achievement of the program, is the capstones.
Capstones, for me, as somebody who comes to this work in international affairs as a practitioner, I think is one of the best parts of the program.
The value of what they did in the classroom is manifest in this particular capstone project.
It allows them to take everything that they've learned in our program up until that moment and practically apply it.
It allowed me to develop and create innovative solutions for the corporation I work with. It was an opportunity to understand how corporations really integrate corporate responsibility into business operations.
Students are working directly with the policymaker
really prepared me with the tools and skills needed to succeed at my former position at Citigroup as a problem manager for Latin America, and currently here at Rocco Collins as the senior specialist in gold trade compliance.
If they want to pursue studies or careers in international affairs of one sort or another, whether in the government or in the private sector or in the think tank world or in academia, the FIU's MAGA program, the Green School's MAGA program, really is a terrific way to get started.
To the person that is considering the Masters of Global Affairs here at FIU, I recommend it because it is a program that is tailored to the needs of the global market